and welcome to this week's edition of Cultured Fools. And as you can see, I'm out of the kitchen and I'm back in the chair, and we're back to doing what we do best. We're talking about history. By popular request of you, the viewer, we're discussing the history of wine. Strap yourself in and feel the G's.
In the beginning, Phil Collins created heaven and earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. There was just an empty space and nothing left to remind him, just the memory of a face. And the spirit of Phil Collins was moving over the waters. And Phil Collins said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And Phil Collins saw that the light was good, and Phil Collins separated the light from the darkness. Phil Collins called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning. And Phil Collins said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And Phil Collins made the firmament and separated the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's how it happened. And it was so. Not really knowing what exactly a firmament was, Phil Collins called the firmament heaven. And then rather lazily there was evening, there was morning and a second day. And Phil Collins said, "Despite selling over 150 million records worldwide, I shall spend large parts of my career being mistaken for Bob Hoskins." And it was so. "But that's fine," said Phil Collins. "Buster will do well at the box office and at least I'll get to finger Ron Weasley's mum." And it was so. "That fax story will haunt my career though," said Phil Collins. But Jill knew my style. "I never call when I'm on the road because I have to save my voice for the next day." And it was so. He called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And Phil Collins saw that it was good. And Phil Collins said, "Maybe I'll get my agent to hook me up with Jason Statham. I mean, I could easily play his father if they make another Transporter movie." And it was so.
Prehistoric banter.
The history of winemaking is essentially the history of humanity, and to tell the story properly we have to go all the way back to the beginning, to Adam and Steve.
Prehistoric banter.
Agricultural communities developed around 10,000 years ago, where humans basically domesticated plants and animals. By establishing these communities, we transitioned from a nomadic lifestyle who were super dependent on foraging and hunting for survival. Agriculture created the economy, and it also allowed us to build permanent settlements and eventually build villages, towns, and even cities. And because we didn't really need to spend our time hunting and gathering because it was there on our doorstep, it kind of freed us up more time to do other things like invent new tools, create a writing system, produce art and philosophy. Eventually all the possessions that we own led to mathematics, and this period of time is known as the Neolithic Revolution. So through agriculture, trade, the pursuit of knowledge and the desire to get white girl wasted, we invented booze. Although we lack a few specifics, wine is thought to have been invented 7,000 years before the Common Era. The earliest archaeological evidence of wine fermentation leads back to China in 7,000 BCE, Georgia from 6,000 BCE, Iran from 5,000 BCE, Greece from 4,500 BCE, and Sicily from 4,000 BCE. So without making any assumptions based on fact that we know of, wine is over 9,000 years old, and that is almost as long as one of Sting's orgasms.
Prehistoric banter.
Back in 2007, a team of archaeologists from UCLA discovered evidence of the world's first winery, which was in Vitos-d'Azur, Armenia. The site itself contained a wine press, fermentation vats, jugs, cups, and a phone charger. The team from UCLA also discovered evidence of vine cuttings and suspected that they'd been making wine back as early as 7,000 BC as well, which would suggest that 7,000 years BCE, not only people were making wine in China, they were also making it in Armenia.
So what's interesting is that we know that over here on the right in China, they were making wine 7,000 years BCE. And we know that over on the left-hand side here, between Azerbaijan and Georgia, where Armenia is, that they were also making wine roughly about the same time. We also know that below here is India, and they weren't introduced to wine until the 13th century. What I find fascinating is that this area here is essentially a barren desert wasteland of mountain ranges populated by very small indigenous tribes. And if you go further into Kazakhstan, it's pretty much the same. The same can be said for going into these areas here in Mongolia, and we also know that over here there's no real population to sort of speak of. Furthermore, this strip of land here is a sort of deserted wasteland, still to this day, inhabitable by any humans. However, when we get to just outside of Ukraine, we have evidence of wine being produced from 4500 BCE. And from here, wine was distributed through Eastern Europe via Ukraine. It is interesting to look at this map and think of what life would have been like 9,000 years ago. How we would have travelled such long distances by foot, and the things that we brought with us. So, as I've said before, the history of wine is the history of humanity.
The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And Phil Collins saw that it was good. Studio. On the third day Phil Collins said, "You know what's funny? I've won 7 Grammys, an Academy Award and 2 Golden Globes, but not once have been up for a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Brits. Isn't that just weird? Pet Shop Boys, Status Quo and Spice Girls, but no Phil Collins? I mean, I practically invented hip-hop, but that's cool. I'll just be history's unflushed poo." And Phil Collins made the 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. That's genuinely it for astronomy, by the way. He made stars also. That's the only mention of astronomy in the entire Bible. On the 4th day Vanessa Phelps was evicted from the Big Brother house. Phil Collins said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the firmament of the heavens." Studio. On the 5th day he said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth according to their kinds." That's right, you heard me, I said creeping things. Studio.
The thriving Egyptian winemaking industry was established in the Nile Delta following great cultivation. And there's even winemaking scenes depicted on the tomb walls that actually verify winemaking in the Delta region. And by the end of the Old Kingdom, they were creating 5 different types of wine. Wine in ancient Egypt was predominantly red, and due to its resemblance to blood, there was a lot of superstition about drinking wine, and it was often used in religious ceremonies. The pharaohs didn't drink wine or even offer it to the gods. They actually felt that it was the blood of the forebearers who actually fought against the gods. And once they were beaten by the gods, they fell to the earth and commingled with the soil, and then sprung up in the vines that produced the grapes. And this was to be considered why drunkenness drives men out of their mind and sends them crazy, because they're actually drinking the blood of like treacherous forebearers who fought against the gods.
Mate. Oh my god. Mate, you were shit-faced last night. Oh my god, I feel fucking rotten. Literally the drunkest I've ever seen you. Can you remember anything? Not really. Bit of a blur. I feel fucking pickled, man. It's fucking wild. You're absolutely out of control. Oh no, it's fucking stupid. Absolutely stupid. Speaking to Ramesses though, and he was saying that apparently wine is the blood of like treacherous forebearers. So like, I mean, what the fuck do you expect, man? Yeah, but I don't remember any of the forebearers shagging Fat Pat. Oh my god. And like, where is it written that any of them shat themselves on the dance floor? Oh fuck. I mean, who shagged Fat Pat? I did. And who shat themselves on the dance floor? Me. Yeah. Oh fuck.
The Phoenicians had a significant effect on the history of winemaking. Considered as masters of the seas, they basically took their wine all up and down the Mediterranean, and from their trade with the Egyptians, they actually transported their own version of wine in ceramic jugs over to the Greek Isles and all the way up to Sicily. The Masala Warship was one of the earliest warships known from archaeological evidence. The wreckage of the Masala was discovered in 1971 just west of Sicily, and on board were evidence of transportation of wine, big ceramic mugs and cups and bowls. They also discovered the remains of marijuana stems that were chewed by the oarsmen.
Prehistoric banter.
When the Phoenicians arrived in Greece, they introduced them to wine and therefore winemaking. Much of the techniques that we still use today were derived from the influence of the Greeks. From there, the Greeks perfected the art of winemaking and set up distribution networks all across the Mediterranean. In Greek mythology, there was a god of wine and ecstasy known as Dionysus.
Ecstasy?
Dionysus, who was the son of Zeus, assigned male from birth and lived as a girl until reaching adulthood, only to reject both binaries and embrace a bi-gender identity. The ancient Greeks would use wine to cure sickness, digestive problems, and help fevers go away. However, apparently the Greeks diluted their wine from 1 part wine to 3 parts water, unlike those naughty Macedonians who drank it neat. So what we know is that winemaking is about 9,000 years old. The earliest discovery of that is in China, 7,000 BCE. And over in Eastern Europe, in Armenia, there is suspected to be winemaking and evidence of winemaking at a later date, around about the same time there. We know that from 3000 BCE, the Egyptians started pushing that along a bit. They were making 5 different styles of wine, mainly red. However, in Tutankhamun's tomb, they found traces of white wine in a jug. From there, we know that the Phoenicians introduced that to the Mediterranean, and then the Greeks really perfected what we know today as wine. So the question is, where does the world of ancient winemaking meet the era of old world winemaking? Essentially that sits in a pocket of time before the Common Era and after the Common Era, or Anno Domini BC, and around about that time there was one group of people who were more influential than most and who loved their wine and basically got their water can't and pretty much set up the foundations as we know it today of winemaking. We'll be dealing with them in the next episode.
Phil Collins said, "Let us make man in our image," referring to himself in the third person like Mike the Situation from Jersey Shore. "Let them have dominion over the fish in the sea, and over the birds in the air, and over the cattle, and over creepy things that creeps upon the earth." Cattle and creepy things. Stop me if you want specifics. So, Phil Collins created man in his own image, in the image of Phil Collins. That's the money shot. The eventual payoff for this ridiculous setup. Replace the word God with Phil Collins in the book of Genesis, and you get comedy gold. Let's have that once again for those who missed it. So, Phil Collins created man in his own image. In the image of Phil Collins. He created male and female. And Phil Collins blessed them, secretly only blessing the males, lol. And Phil Collins said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and have dominion over the fish in the sea and over the birds in the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." And Phil Collins said, "Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed which is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, including the sticky icky. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth." I know I've said this about 5 times, but I really can't reiterate this enough. You're in charge. It was a close call between you and the Badgers, but I went with you guys. What could possibly go wrong with humans being in charge? I am time itself. I am the omnipotent force with infinite knowledge. Suffice to say, I've got a good feeling about this. And it was so. And Phil Collins saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was good. Apart from gays. Despite putting the male G-spot in the anus.
Prehistoric banter.